You and your girlfriend are parked on Lover's Lane, the moonlight shining its wondrous glow on you both. Someone comes up to the car with a gun. Such an innocent image is shattered by a psychopath one night in Houston who is lurking in the shadows and ready to strike. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the New York Times best-selling author of dozens of true crime books. I've dedicated the past 26 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. The late 80s and early 90s were all about the nightclub, or dance club, as I recall how we'd refer to it then. It was a time when you did actually, as Loverboy says in their song, work for the weekend and count the days until it was time to head out to the club. I am not sure this is the case today, but for us back then, the club scene was our world. Bayou Mama's in Houston, Texas, in August 1990, was one of the go-to hotspots of its time. Local 20-somethings met, mingled, danced, drank, and partied until the wee hours of the night. 21-year-old Andy Atkinson and 22-year-old Cheryl Henry were no different from their friends and peers. Perhaps the only contrast being that they didn't go to the clubs to hook up because they were, just a few weeks after meeting, already head over heels for each other. Bayou Mama's is located on Westheimer in South Gessner, a rural section of Houston near Chinatown. The original building where the club had been is long gone and has since been demolished. But in 1990, it was then part of the Wood Lake Square Shopping Center in what was a notable, rougher section of town. Cheryl has this bright blonde hair with distinctive black roots, deep-set, large, engaging eyes, friendly and seductive, along with a Colgate smile. While Andy has the look of one of those male actors from 90210. You know, the star quarterback of the college team, per se. A true million-dollar smile, striking blue eyes, closely cropped short hair cut around the ears, blemish-free skin, and an overall look of innocence. As a couple, the two were devoted to each other and had big hopes and dreams for what was ahead. August 22nd, 1990 was a muggy, humid, and warm night in Houston, and Andy and Cheryl meet up with Cheryl's younger sister at Mama's for what had been planned as just another one of those normal nights out at the club. Some thumping dance music, a few drinks, say hello to some friends, get their dance on, and head back home. Watching her sister and Andy while inside the club, all over each other, Cheryl's sister even says at one point, "Get a room, why don't you?" And they all laugh. So you get the picture. Cheryl had been attending Stephen F. Austin State University in Texas and was back home in Houston for that summer when she met Andy. They had not been dating long, as I said, but had seemed to find the person each wanted to be with. At the time, Cheryl worked at Rick's Cabaret, a local club, for some extra cash, and the club was right around the corner from Mama's. Her family describes her as incredible, kind, and loving. Her stepsister noted that, although Cheryl usually didn't get easily worked up over boys, she had it bad for Andy. Andy is from North Carolina. He had recently completed a semester at Campbell University back home before moving to Houston just weeks before he met Cheryl. He wanted to be closer to his father's side of the Atkinson family. He wound up living with his grandmother in the Meyerland area and got a job working at a nearby Gold's Gym on Gulf Freeway. He supplemented that gig working with his dad, a manager at a club called Dream Street, where Andy usually ran the front door. So here are two young adults going through their lives, meeting and falling in love, seeing themselves being together forever. That was the dream in the 80s and 90s. It was a far different world of dating than we see today, where people on dating apps become dispensable pictures to swipe out of your way. You find one thing you don't like, and boom, you swipe left for the next person in line. Back then, you met someone, you played it out, you see how it went, you accepted each other's issues and idiosyncrasies, and you understood that we are all striving for the same thing: happiness and love. You didn't keep a scorecard of things that bothered you about a person. You learned that people were different, you weren't always going to get along, you weren't always going to want to do the same things or even like the same things, and you realized how rare love is. I don't know, I think we've lost some of that today. I understand every generation thinks its time was the best time, but dating was dramatically different then. I don't think anyone could argue with me on that point. When we look back today and laser focus on Houston, Texas, during the year 1990, several vicious, sadistic serial killers were out and about roaming the streets. Gruesome killers. Samuel Little was around. Edward George McGregor and Mr. Torture Chamber Killer Robert Ben Rhodes, a real sick bastard, if there ever was one. I'm not about to go through each of these psychopaths' exploits, but these three were very active in this area of Texas and other places at this time. So there is a certain boogeyman out there lurking in the dark shadows context here. I just want to point that out. I say all this, obviously, because of what is about to happen on August 22nd, 1990, in Houston. Cheryl and Andy decide they've had enough of Mama's and tell her sister they're taking off. It's late, about 11:30 p.m. "Good night," Cheryl's sister says to them. In describing this later to the Houston Chronicle, Cheryl's sister said, "We kissed each other goodbye and told each other we loved each other, but that was what we always did. And that's the last time I saw her." They get into Andy's white Honda Civic and they drive. They don't want their night specifically to end, but needed to get out of the club and be alone. They find a secluded area in a suburban neighborhood not far from the club on Eldridge Drive, an area known then as Lover's Lane. Most big towns had a Lover's Lane of some sort kids flocked to and hung out and wouldn't be bothered doing whatever they wanted to do inside their cars. I don't think we can underscore enough that these kids were happy and vibrant and excited for what life had in store for them. Perhaps it was a summer romance and would fizzle out by the time school started up again in the fall, but for right now, in this moment, they were crazy about each other. They had so much going for them and so many things to look forward to. Their family members later recalled how enthusiastic and ecstatic they were about life. How much they were adored by those around them and how much joy they brought to others. I don't want this to get lost in what happens moving forward because we can sometimes diminish the severity of a loss and how devastating that loss can be on those left behind. It's a lifelong pain that may dwindle some as decades pass, but it is always there humming in the background of life. Something is missing. Something is gone. It can never be replaced. When the next morning comes and Cheryl's sister realizes Cheryl didn't come home, it's clear that Andy is too much of a gentleman to be behind such a thing, so I am certain nobody involved believed that he had whisked Cheryl away somewhere, or that they had gotten a hotel or slept in the car. But what's more, Andy's family is also perplexed because Andy did not return home that night either. And there's not a chance the two of them decided to take off together. They were responsible young adults. They wouldn't do that to the people they loved. So they are reported missing to the Houston Police Department, and a search begins. Police head out immediately and begin at Bayou Mama's, the last known place anyone had seen the two of them. Of course, nobody can offer any solid information because it was late and they left together in Andy's car. This produces a wider search. And that is when the reality of the situation begins to sink in for family members. Something is terribly wrong. Neither Andy nor Cheryl would have gone this long without communicating with someone from either of their families. When we come back from the first break, we'll get back into the search, including a major discovery. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps, a true crime podcast. Andy drove a small, white Honda Civic, and so searchers were looking for that car. In the woods, along the roads, broken down on the freeway, parked in a lot somewhere. That following day, August 23rd, a security guard patrolling an industrial park near Lover's Lane is cruising along when he sees a white vehicle parked on Lover's Lane close to a wooded area nearby. This is in an isolated cul-de-sac, so the car kind of stands out. He stops and has a look inside the vehicle. He sees a purse and a pair of women's shoes. The keys are still in the ignition. The seats are reclined. There's a cassette inside the stereo. It's like these people were just plucked out of their lives here. The car matches the description of Andy's vehicle, but there is no sign of Andy or Cheryl. Further, the guard checks out the purse, finds Cheryl's driver's license, and calls her family, who says she is actually missing. They bring in search dogs, police on horseback, helicopters fly overhead, and cops begin scouring the woods with flashlights, as it had turned to night as the search continued on. The dogs pick up the scent from Andy's car and head deeper into the woods. Cheryl's mother, after hearing from the guard that he has located the vehicle, where, and that something was going on, heads over to see what she can find out. I cannot imagine the agony this poor woman is going through. Every alarm bell must have been going off. Getting out of her vehicle, Cheryl's mother rushes into the woods. She can see movement, lots of lights, activity. They found something. By then, they had located Andy's body. He was tied to a tree and nearly decapitated. A horrific scene. Nearby is a bra and a pair of panties, obviously torn off and ripped. Oddly enough, Andy's killer had taken Andy's golf clubs out of his vehicle, one report claims. Then lined up golf balls and his clubs, kind of like a breadcrumb trail pointing in a direction. Investigators know what that means. Cheryl. Officers on scene hold back Cheryl's mother from going any further into the woods. It is a terribly violent scene. Nobody, especially the mother of the victim, should have to see her child this way. To this day, Cheryl's mother tells KHOU 11 News many decades later, "I know if they would have let me go to Cheryl, I would have breathed into her and she'd be alive." So you see what I was alluding to before the break? This stuff never goes away. It is always there with the victim's family. Cheryl was her mother's oldest child, her firstborn, her baby. Cheryl was found underneath some old cedar fence planks, and strangely enough, there was a $20 bill near her body. Her hands were said to have been bound with hemp rope behind her back. The Houston PD says Cheryl was stabbed in the throat in 3 different places. She had also been violently sexually assaulted. I have seen reports that Cheryl's body was found first, Andy after that. But in the end, the totality of this brutal crime doesn't change. Investigators come out later and say that Andy was alive when Cheryl was assaulted and murdered, forced to watch the woman he loved be tortured and killed in front of him. Andy's father later told KHOU 11 News, which means he was tied to a tree and listened to her scream, listened to her being murdered, knowing that they were going to do the same thing to him and he couldn't do anything about it. That's hard to accept. As they begin to analyze the scene, a few theories are developed. One of the detectives believes they were targeted. He bases the theory on Cheryl being tied up more firmly with additional bindings and the fact that it was clear she had fought her attacker. This gave the detective pause to consider more than one perpetrator, seeing how difficult it would be for one man to tie Andy to a tree while trying to keep Cheryl restrained. I don't know. There was DNA left at the scene, so that would someday perhaps help solve the case. But as the first few days drag on, with the impact of the double murder crashing down hard on this community, they don't have much to go on. Yes, CODIS will be a possibility, and they can also do a careful investigation of everything at the scene and perhaps find trace evidence and even more DNA or blood. But that is time-consuming, and you spend a long time waiting on results. For years, this case goes on with no viable suspect. They develop a profile and believe the suspect or suspects knew Andy and Cheryl, which is something that baffled me when I first saw it in the research. This is a vicious, extremely violent crime. It's hard to place friends of theirs in that suspect pool, unless he was a guy who had become obsessed with one or both of them, and they saw him infrequently, like a shop clerk or a gas station attendant. That I could see. But still, the crime seems to be one of a more opportunistic nature than someone targeting these specific kids. Investigators reckon the age of the perp to be about the same age as Cheryl and Andy, early to mid-20s, which again, I struggled with. This type of crime is not one you start with, so I think they would be looking for a repeat offender here, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, or even 40s. The attack seems quite organized, planned quite thoroughly. The murders, maybe not so much. About 11 years into the investigation, with still no suspects, they receive a letter. The writer says he has information that can solve the murders, but he wants $100,000. What a piece of garbage. Why would you do that? This could be a response to the HPD putting out word about their profile. Here's someone trying to cash in. They never hear from the person again. That link to the victims, however, is something detectives throughout the years cannot let go of. That this killer was the type to set his eyes on a victim within his day-to-day routine and fixate on the person for a time, maybe learning their routines before striking. That theory is somewhat proven when, in 2007, 17 years after Andy and Cheryl are murdered, investigators get a hit on the DNA from Andy and Cheryl's scene. Not a name or a specific person, but the DNA from Cheryl and Andy's murders is connected scientifically to the same perp from an attack on a woman that occurred in the same year, 1990, a few months before the murders. The system and technology is just then, in 2007, catching up. The victim in the other crime is a dancer at an exotic club. 2 months before Cheryl and Andy were murdered, she says she was leaving Gigi's nightclub and drove to her boyfriend's house in northwest Houston. He was a pilot, so he was gone. She gets in, orders some takeout food, and begins eating in the living room. When she was finished, she went upstairs to get ready for bed. Walking into the bedroom, a masked man pops out from behind the door. He has a long-barreled handgun pointed at her. "Where's your boyfriend?" he says. He had a black stocking over his head, but she can somewhat see his face. Brown hair, brown eyes. He's in his late 20s, early 30s, she says, about 6 feet tall, 180 to 200 pounds, and an olive complexion. What I find interesting is that she says he was wearing a uniform of some sort. Gloves, black pants, and a black shirt. She mentions that he had a military-like posture about him as well. The thought is, security guard. The man grabs hold of the pilot's girlfriend by the neck, wrestles her hands behind her back, duct tapes them together, covers her mouth and eyes with tape, and also places a shopping bag over her head. He has that gun with him, and he taunts and he threatens her with it, tormenting her by cocking the hammer back and pulling the trigger. He rapes her, takes all the money she has in her purse, and tells her he is going to be in the house between 5 minutes and an hour more, not to move. And that is the odd part of it. He let her go, and yet he then kills 2 people 2 months later. In killing Cheryl and Andy, he could have been responding, or maybe evolving is a better word, to the pilot's girlfriend going to the police to report her attack. But for some reason, he goes from rape and kidnapping to rape and murdering 2 people. The DNA matches. Investigators are now certain that the man in the stocking who raped the pilot's girlfriend is the same man who murdered Cheryl and Andy. In 2007, investigators locate the woman who was raped and let go, and they interview her again. This time, though, they have her do something for them she hadn't done back when she reported the incident. I need to take another break. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. We'll be right back. Lois Gibson holds the Guinness Book World Record for the most identifications by a forensic artist. She has said she had a near-death experience after being the victim of a rapist murderer, and that experience has helped her connect with her work. Some call her the most successful forensic artist to ever put pencil to paper. In 2007, Houston investigators get Lois to sit with the rape victim connected to Andy and Cheryl's murderer, and Lois is able to complete a composite sketch. The sketch turns out to be twofold, because she ages the attacker from 1990 to 2007. If he was 30 in 1990, he would be near 50 in 2007. Law enforcement then releases both sketches. The sketches produce your typical nutbags claiming their crazy uncle, or maybe their boss they hate, are the guy. But other than that, nothing comes from having a composite drawing of the alleged murderer and rapist out in public circulating. Likewise with the DNA in CODIS and other databases now available. No hits, which in effect means their guy has never been arrested for a felony or has somehow flown under the radar of being found out. As the years pass, investigators are beyond frustrated. They have the guy, but don't have his name. You must understand, a lot of these detectives looking into cold cases, not only in Houston, but all over, cannot let go of certain murder cases. Many of them have kids of their own. And to have 2 young adults in college so viciously murdered, it can become personal to a lot of these men and women. In those cases that drag on for decades, generations of investigators pass down the case and a new batch come in and experience the same frustrations and feelings. One investigator who takes over Andy and Cheryl's case in 2008 tells the Houston Chronicle, "It's like a bad Hollywood movie. Somebody came up on them, marched them out into the woods. These two knew they were going to die." It's like a nightmare, actually. The case almost has this Zodiac feel to it, doesn't it? Similar MO to a few of the Zodiac murders. And it seems it will linger in the freezer next to countless other cases like Zodiac forever. Let's switch gears for 1 minute and talk about individuals who impersonate police officers and military. So you can kind of guess where this case is going. These men have a tremendous need for power and control. They have shallow, fragile egos that they feel the need to boost at the expense of victims, along with an obsession with authority. So that's the overall picture. Oftentimes, they have been shunned by law enforcement agencies who have likely kicked their applications aside because they could not pass the psych evaluation. But more so because of physical limitations and prior criminal acts. Forensic psychologists will say they exhibit extreme narcissism, inadequacy, and are prone to depression. So, the cop cosplay becomes an outlet to escape a life that can feel invisible and defeated and deflated. And even though impersonating a cop is all made up in a pretend world, it gives them this sense of feeling special by having authority over people. As you might imagine, this is a recipe for bad things to come when frustration and rejection, regardless of their role-playing, persists. This would be when that need to act out and wield that power they believe they have takes over. Add to it a sexual deviancy some of them harbor, and you have yourself one dangerous mother roaming about your community. Where the obsession with law enforcement is concerned, I think it is insignificant because their deepest need, their number one goal, is to control you and have power and authority over you. According to his history, a man by the name of Floyd William Parrott, who was born in 1962, making him 28 years old in 1990, was arrested in 1988 for impersonating a police officer in Harris County, Texas, of which Houston is a part. 2 years later, after getting a slap on the wrist for that, he was arrested again for the same thing. This was in May 1990, just a few months before Andy and Cheryl were murdered, and right around the same time the pilot's girlfriend was attacked and raped. Floyd has this rather common man look. At 64 years old in 2026, his bald head is encircled by a thin layer of gray hair just above his long ears. He has these steely, dark eyes and pasty, red-blotched skin, a gray and white mustache and beard. He has worked in an auto parts store and as a bouncer. Other information claims he was married several times and has kids. In March 2026, FBI agents and Houston investigators show up at Floyd's Nebraskan residence with a warrant for capital felony murder in the deaths of Andy and Cheryl, with additional charges related to the attack on the pilot's girlfriend. They believe they have finally, after 35 plus years, found their man. 3.5 decades. But they stayed with the case, linking Floyd by DNA without any doubt, and it would appear that the Lovers Lane murders are finally solved. I'll be right back to conclude this episode and explain what is happening in the case as we speak. As of today and the production of this episode, law enforcement has not said how they discovered Floyd William Parrott was behind the murders and the rape. My guess is they went the forensic genetic genealogy route. They've had Floyd's semen since 1990, and so it was only a matter of time before technology and the hard work of genealogists caught up to him. They also claim that a tip led them to Parrott. So the two combined to catch a true psychopath and get him off the streets all came together within a short period of time. I am not sure a guy like this ever stopped raping and perhaps even killing, so I am certain they are, as we speak, looking at him for additional murders and rapes. Parrott is awaiting extradition to Harris County from Nebraska. He faces the death penalty, as he well should, and I hope they give it to him. I want to say that the Department of Corrections had this scumbag in custody in 1995. Parrott was sentenced to 20 years for yet again impersonating a police officer. He served just 3 out of those 20 years. 3 years. Let me be clearer. He was let out 17 years early on parole. How the hell does a court system justify such a thing? Let me just end on what the guy has done. In 1988, he was convicted of carrying a weapon, a blue steel revolver. And they even gave him the weapon back after his case was concluded. This gun matches perfectly with the description of the gun used during the first rape assault on the pilot's girlfriend. In 1990, he was out on bond for impersonating a police officer when he assaulted that woman and then murdered Andy and raped and murdered Cheryl. He was out on bond. How he was arrested on felony charges and his DNA failed to hit inside the CODIS database, I have no idea. Another failure of the system that needs to be looked into. Why is it so difficult to get justice right? Why are we allowing scum to repeat offenses and be paroled early? Why are prisons letting out career criminals so they can, as we know they will, repeat their behaviors? I don't think for 1 minute that this guy started with rape in 1990 at 28 years old or stopped after he got away with 2 rapes and 2 murders. I am certain he committed aggressive violent acts before these. Carrying out just sentences is not rocket science. It's protecting victims at all costs. We need to stop giving the breaks to the perpetrators and start putting victims of crime first. That's it for this week. Be safe. Be aware. Sources for this episode include Houston PD news release, May 19th, 2008. 1990 cold case. Who killed Cheryl Henry and Andy Atkinson on Lover's Lane in West Houston? August 24th, 2023. KHOU reporters Michelle Homer, Sherman Chow. 2 knew they were going to die. Houston Chronicle, May 19th, 2008. How Houston Detectives Caught Floyd Parrott by Corey McCord. KHOU ABC News, March 26, 2026. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.